Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on Sunday, June 9th, 2013. Um, those of you who watched yesterday know that my plan of attack for today was to try to delve more deeply into the David Pogue book about, the Finder, the folder, the file folder format of uh, OS X. Well, I haven't done it yet because it's only 12:30, right? Well, it's almost 1 o'clock actually, right now in the afternoon. Um, I, I got a little sidetracked. Now I went to 8 o'clock church, which means that I drive by I've got two houses on my 8 acres, I live back by the creek, and there's a corner house up on the corner between uh, Worthington Galena Road and East Powell Road. And over the years, I've had people living in the corner house. Paul's parents lived there, both when his original mother was alive and then when his mother was there, with his dad. And they moved out in 2001. And then my son and daughter-in-law lived there for about 15 months between 2004 and 2005. And nobody's lived there since, but I go up there and I change light bulbs and I have the water turned off, at the meter. So it's not like, all the antifreezes and all the traps and all that stuff. But, obviously there's nobody living there. It's obvious that nobody lives there, which is basically why I bought the place in the first place. I didn't want people around me that I didn't know or care about. Right up there, looming over me, right up there on the corner. So I've got three parcels. My original 2.14. Then I bought the front field, which is 4.6, and then about less than a year later, I bought this corner property when the woman who was there, she was in her 90s and going blind. She moved up to Michigan to live with her daughter. So it's worked out over the years. Paul's dad built this garage up there. So, excuse me. So, well, that's the lay of the land. So, I drove by the place this morning, as I do whenever I go up to Delaware. And I was sort of cast my eye upon it. I was thinking about whether should I mow today or can I put it off a little bit longer. And I noticed the pole light. I have a pole light in front of the garage was out. Well, it's I've had to change that bulb a couple times over the years. To get the ladder. Homie doesn't like to do ladders very much anymore, given his knees and so forth. So, and his balance, given the fact I'm lurching all over the place most of the time. So, I said, on the way home, I'll check, see if the power's on or the power's off, or, are the other lights on. So I pull in after, church. I drive home and I pull in, and sure enough, I've got two floodlights on the corner of the house, the corner of the corner house, that shine out pretty much where the mercury vapor pole lamp shines. And then I've got a standing light that the electric company actually runs. I rent from them on a monthly basis, and that's in back of the garage. So there's a lot of light out there, on the theory that things won't happen. So, I go in. First of all, I noticed that the back door to the basement is, well, the outside back door to the basement. The storm door to the basement is open. Well, it takes, this thing just doesn't pop open and flop loose. This thing drags on the concrete. You have to lift and struggle to move it at all. And it didn't look like the inside door had been horsed with. So then I go up around to go into the back, and the outside back door is shut, but the inside back door is standing open. Also, there's a sheet, in sort of this little back porch mudroom area there between the outside back door and the inside back door. And initially I thought, well, some homeless guys, slept in here. And then I noticed all this this sort of charcoal stuff. I thought, well, hell, maybe the homeless guys tried to set the place on fire too, But as it turns out, clearly somebody had broken in because the back door was, it was bashed. Not the glass. It's got a big glass pane. They didn't break the glass. They bashed some sort of heavy tool, probably like a fence post driver, against the striker plate that's got the doorknob and the lock on it, and it ripped. It ripped the door jamb adjacent to the door proper. It ripped a big chunk of it off and thrust it through into the kitchen there, where it opens. And the interesting thing about it is, the stuff that actually is missing that I didn't notice was missing until I had made about 3 or 4 passes right by where all these things used to be. My attention was first grabbed by the fact that there was a cast iron wood stove in the living room, set up so that it vented up the fireplace, and that was gone, and that accounted for the charcoal on the floor and a log lying in the middle of the living room and so forth. And then before I noticed the other 2 things in the kitchen that were gone, I went down to the basement because the power was out. Now they had broken the floodlights, but I thought, I couldn't get any of the other switches to work. So I went down to the basement and I had my flashlight, and I went over to the electric box and somebody had thrown all the switches off. All the circuit breakers were turned off. The main breaker wasn't, interestingly. The main breaker was still on, but all of the other switches on the circuit breaker box were turned off. Well, right away, I noticed that the water heater was gone. See, I had the water turned off to the place at the meter anyway. And I also had the water turned off at the valve in the house, but the water heater was gone. Now the furnace was still there, and the fuel oil tank was still there. An old freezer that doesn't work was still there. Interestingly, a shop light, one of these big, heavy, long, 8-foot long, double-headed shop lights, was missing. And just to save a little time here, after a couple more passes, I noticed that all of the copper plumbing was also missing in the basement. You seem to leave whoever was there, well, it had to be at least 2 or 3 guys that did this, left the plumbing intact in the sink and in the bathroom. Now, the cast iron plumbing they left intact. Horst was trying to take out the cast iron plumbing because this house had both. Of course, where the copper and the cast iron were sort of soldered together, you had this ongoing electrochemical reaction all the time, which resulted in a low-grade leak there all the time when the water was turned on. Chemistry can be fun, guys. So that pretty much accounts for the stuff in the basement. And then, so I went upstairs, and I thought, well, the stove's gone. The electric stove is gone. Not only the wood stove's gone, the electric stove is gone. Now, this electric stove was, sort of a random heat generator. You turn it on, but you never knew what you were going to get. So you always had to watch it. It drove my daughter-in-law nuts. Because, any temperature you set on the oven, basically you had no idea. There was a chance it might be that actual temperature from time to time, but most often it was something else entirely. And, it took me a couple more passes, and actually, I can't really confirm this, but when I finally got back here, I got thinking, the refrigerator's gone too. Now, the refrigerator actually was a very nice little refrigerator. That was probably the only thing in there that was actually worth taking. Of course, they're selling this. I don't know whether they're selling it for scrap. Maybe they'll sell the refrigerator for $300. I don't know. Maybe they needed a refrigerator. What a bunch of lowlifes. Well, at least they didn't, really, really, truly trash the place. So I went out and called the sheriff. And I'll tell you, I've been up here for since 1982, for over 31 years. And I've had to call the sheriff maybe 4 or 5 times. And whenever I do, they are here in a flash, but they outdid themselves this time. As soon as I hit, the red stop button on the cell phone, I turn around. And the sheriff's in the driveway. Well, he said he had been listening into the call. I guess they can actually listen into the calls, the telephone calls of the dispatcher over their radio. And he was just had to be by. They would have been there in 4 minutes anyway. They always are. So, showed him the stuff and all this. Oh, and of course, I've left something out. See, it's kind of comprehensive. They had also broken into the garage via the side door. The same thing. They bashed in right against the lock plate there. By that time, I had gone back into the basement 3 or 4 times and horsed around with the circuit breaker box and gotten power working back out in the garage. So I could actually open the garage door using the little remote push button thing because it doesn't have an outdoor lock on it. You either get it open with the little radio keypad out front, or you don't get it open unless you're inside, and then you can open it from inside. So there wasn't anything out there in that garage for them to take, really. They left those shop lights. They left those shop lights out there in the garage. And they didn't try to take. I don't know. Maybe they'll come back. This had to have happened between Wednesday at, say, noon, 12:30, which was the last time I'd driven by, before I went to church. And then when I went by on the way to church here at 7:15 this morning. So between 12:30 Wednesday afternoon and 7:15 this morning, somebody's done this. And you can see the tire tracks where they had pulled in. There had to be at least 2 guys, and I imagine there had to be 3, because that cast iron stove was really heavy. And anybody who's moved a refrigerator knows how hard it is to move a refrigerator. They've had to have a dolly or 3 guys, or Well, I did finally get my pole light back on, and I haven't tried to replace the floodlights on the corner yet. I think tomorrow I may go up there and make a little video, this sort of regale you with this a little bit more. Also just, see, I don't have any insurance on the place. I have liability insurance, but I don't have any property damage. Nationwide, in its wisdom, canceled me. But they were very willing to sell me a very lower grade nationwide policy for liability at about the same price I was paying for the previous policy. Nationwide is on your side. Deny, delay, defend. That's the insurance company mantras. Well, in any case, the only other thing of note today is to report that there's a little one of the baby deer down right at the very bottom of our little cinder block steps that go down to the creek bank. You know, very well sandwiched into all of the growth. I I I thought maybe he was injured, but I watched him through the binoculars for a while, and he's clearly not injured. He's just sort of lying there, and he's licking himself, and he's looking around. He's not obviously in distress. I assume his mother's around somewhere. I mean, you can see where some of these guys have been lying now. I mean, they have these little pockets down in the weeds where. Uh, so, excuse me. We shall see on that. Yes. Well, low life's abounding. What can you say? Alrighty, YouTubers. Bye bye now.